Some 15 kilometers west of Datong in Shanxi province lies a low hill named Wuzhou. This unremarkable hill might have gone unnoticed in maps and historical records, were it not for a stunning ancient grotto complex found at its southern foot. This treasure house of art, one of the largest such complexes in China, is the Yungang Grottoes. The first phase of the carvings took place in the mid-5th century, finishing around 465 AD, but the work resumed and continued for another 70 years. It was a turbulent time in Chinese history, with the region around Datong being ruled by the Xianbei people under their Northern Wei dynasty. There were constant political changes and wars of unification at that time. In that era of destruction and reconstruction, ethnic integration was a continuous project. The Han culture merged rapidly with the cultures of the Xianbei, Xiongnu and other minority ethnic groups, as well as with foreign cultures from more distant regions like India, Persia and Rome. Buddhism had already begun to spread in China. The statues of the Buddha not only mark the cultural fusion of that time, but also reflect the challenge faced by the ambitious Xianbei people from the northern steppes in adopting the Han culture, embracing new styles of clothing and new systems of social organization. Craftsmen condensed and recorded that fervent and turbulent era in the grottos on Wuzhou Hill. With their elegant and imperious beauty, the carvings shine brilliantly across the ages, and the name Yungang is forever etched in historic splendor. It was the Tuoba clan of the Xianbei people who established the Northern Wei dynasty and built the Yungang Grottoes. However, this clan, along with the brilliant and diverse empire they established, later dissolved into the mists of time. The origins of the clan had long been a mystery, and people had always wondered which land had nurtured such a legendary clan. A crucial clue lies in one historical record. According to Book of Wei, in 443 AD, a small state called Wuzhou came to pay tribute to the Northern Wei dynasty. The Wuzhou claimed that they had discovered a stone chamber in the northwest of their territory, in the great Xianbei Mountains, where the ancestors of the Northern Wei had once lived. In response, Emperor Tuoba Tao of the Northern Wei dispatched emissaries to make offerings and inscribe blessings on the walls of the chamber. Historians speculate that the great Xianbei Mountains are probably the greater Qinggan Mountains of today. However, the exact location of the stone chamber remained unknown. Around 10 kilometers north of Ali He Township in Orgon Autonomous Banner of Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region lies a mountainous area with cascading forests and towering peaks. Among the cliffs there's a natural stone cave 20 meters high and covering an area of 2,000 square meters. The cave is known by the locals as the dwelling place of a deity named Gaxian, hence its name, the Gaxian Cave. On July 30th, 1980, archaeologists Mi Wenping unexpectedly discovered stone inscriptions dating back over 1,500 years inside this secluded cave. Weathered over the centuries, the inscriptions were already indistinct and difficult to read. But persisting in their efforts, the archaeologists managed to reconstruct the inscriptions using rubbings. The inscriptions caused great excitement among the archaeologists, revealing evidence as to where the Tuoba clan had originated, and thus solving a 1,500-year-old puzzle. The stone inscriptions found in the Gaxian cave consist of 201 characters, largely matching the inscriptions that Emperor Tuoba Tao of the Northern Wei dynasty had ordered. This seemed to confirm the site as the birthplace of the Tuoba clan of the Xianbei people, where they lived in a primitive tribe until the 1st or 2nd century CE. From here, the clan would expand to take control of much of the Central Plains and change the course of China's history. According to historical records, the Tuoba clan left their ancestral lands around the greater Qingan Mountains in the 1st century, during the early years of the Eastern Han dynasty, and migrated southwards. How did they learn about Buddhism? Why did they decide to carve the Yungang Grottoes? Among all the statues in the Yungang Grottoes, this is the most famous. Most promotional materials about the grottos feature this statue of Shakyamuni Buddha, which is 13.5 meters tall and is the main statue in Cave 20. The Buddha is seated in the lotus position, and his hand gesture, the Dhyana Mudra, indicates that he is meditating. Buddhist teachings say that the Buddha possesses 32 major physical characteristics and 80 minor ones. These include the Ushnisha at the top of the head, the radiant tuft of white hair between the eyebrows, the elongated earlobes, and the hands reaching below the knees. Meanwhile, the Buddha's countenance exudes compassion and wisdom. The statue in Cave 20 is considered a perfect expression of these characteristics.
再呢，它就雕刻的艺术水平高超。尽管它不是云冈石窟最高大的一尊佛像，但是呢，它从形象上，从它的表现上，是云冈石窟之最，第一佛像。
As the premier Buddha statue in the Yungang Grottoes, the main Buddha statue in Cave 20 is far more than just an exquisite sculpture. Many scholars believe that it's one of the earliest statues carved in the Yungang Grottoes. Since the construction of the grottos was ordered by Emperor Pingcheng of the Northern Wei dynasty, many scholars think that the earliest colossal Buddha statues represent the emperors who founded the dynasty. And the statue in Cave 20 may well represent the first emperor of the Northern Wei, Tuoba Gui. In the 1st century, after leaving the dense forests of the greater Qingan Mountains, the Xianbei Tuoba clan entered the Mongolian grasslands, where they engaged in prolonged warfare with the Xiongnu and other ethnic groups. During the Wei Jin period, from 220 AD to 420 AD, northern China was plagued by such incessant wars. In 386 AD, at the age of 16, Tuoba Gui established a state called Wei around present-day Hohhot in northern Mongolia. Historically, it was known as the Northern Wei dynasty. 10 years later, Tuoba Gui led the horsemen of the Northern Wei out of the grasslands and overran Zhongshan, the capital city of the latter Yan state of what is today Dingzhou in Hebei province. They then continued their movement southward. The Hengshan mountain stretches over 150 kilometers from east to west across the provinces of Shanxi and Hebei. This natural barrier temporarily blocked the southward advance of the Xianbei. This is the famous Hanging Temple, built on a steep southern cliff of the Hangshan Mountain. A bold and ingenious design, the temple has a total length of over 30 meters, while standing over 50 meters above the ground. It's said that it's suspended in mid-air to be closer to heaven. However, there's another explanation. Looking westward from the temple, one can see numerous square holes on the mountain, the typical remains of an ancient plank road. In the winter of 398 AD, a huge army, 100,000 strong, led by Tuoba, shattered the peace of the valley. They built a plank road through Hangshan Mountain, overcoming the barrier to their southward progress. The road was built along the Jinglongsha Reservoir, passing directly below where the Hanging Temple stands today. In fact, the predecessor to the temple was a garrison station and depot established by Tuoba. 1,600 years ago, Tuoba led his nomadic Tuoba tribe to Pingcheng, present-day Datong. Archaeological research on Pingcheng and the Northern Wei dynasty in Datong has unearthed many Northern Wei dynasty pottery figurines. These reveal various aspects of people's daily lives at that time. Agriculture is a major theme among these figurines. In 398 AD, Tuoba issued a decree that transformed the nomadic Xianbei people into farmers like their Han neighbors. He implemented a system which allocated domestic cattle and land to every Xianbei household that moved to Pingcheng. They were required to cultivate the land and pay tithes. In the same year, Tuoba declared himself emperor and designated Pingcheng, present-day Datong, as his imperial capital. As a nomadic tribe accustomed to riding horses and living in yurts on grassland, they not only had to learn irrigation and farming techniques, but also how to build cities, as the dynasties in the Central Plains had done. In a short period of time, the Xianbei people had moved from a nomadic civilization to a settled agricultural setup. The magnificent Huayan Temple, standing in the center of Datong, is always busy. The earliest surviving temples in Datong were mostly built during the Liao and Jin dynasties. However, Datong flourished after it became the capital of the Northern Wei dynasty. The 97 years when Datong served as the imperial capital witnessed large-scale construction, marking the city's most exalted era. In April 2003, a joint archaeological team from the Shanxi Provincial Cultural Relics Bureau discovered a large Northern Wei dynasty architectural site at Shaochangchang, north of Datong.
咱们现在来这个位置啊，就是咱们所说的这个操场城北魏1号遗址，这东西是44.4米，这个南北方向吧是31.5米，台基是属于黄土夯筑的，在它的台基的南边有2处踏道，相距之间就是14米多一点吧。
Although the archaeological site has now been backfilled for urban development, bringing the research work to a temporary halt, this excavation made Pingcheng, the Grand Northern Wei capital of historical record, known to a wider world. According to the records, Pingcheng had a population of 1 million, with streets crisscrossing the city. The imperial palace, inner city, and outer city walls were arranged in an orderly fashion. It was the most magnificent and prosperous city on the vast northern lands of China during that era.
平城是中国第一座按照汉文化传统建造的都城，它的14街的街坊，平城的 城防的设计啊，规划呀， 没有平城的14街，没有平城的规划，就没有唐代长安城啊。
Apart from building a Han-style capital, Tuoba also adopted various systems from the Han dynasty, including noble titles, official ranks, schools and etiquette. Despite competing with the Han regime of the Eastern Jin dynasty to the south, Tuoba still solemnly paid tribute to Confucius every year. Similarly, Taoism, with its attendant yin and yang philosophy and the pursuit of a transcendent immortality, gained recognition. In short, Han cultural traditions from the Central Plains took root and flourished among the Xianbei people. At the same time, Buddhism, a new religion from the western regions, was also spreading. Buddhism played a key role in the birth of the Yungang Grottoes. Sulu Plains, North Mount, the dome of heaven covers all the open ground, the sky deep blue, over a wilderness unbound. Winds blow, grass bends, cattle are seen all around. Few people know that this famous Yue Fu poem was originally translated into Chinese from a Xianbei folk song during the late Eastern Han dynasty, when the Xianbei people were still grazing their cattle on the Sulu Plains. A significant foreign influence arrived in China. Buddhism traveled along the Silk Road from India via Central Asia, through China's Xinjiang and Gansu, to arrive in the Central Plains. The earliest Buddhist temple in China, the White Horse Temple, was built during that era. The late Eastern Han dynasty and the following Wei Jin period were tumultuous times in Chinese history, marked by frequent wars and killings. The suffering population found solace in Buddhism, with its teaching which explained suffering and redemption.
佛教是提倡修来世，今世都有多么痛苦，多么艰难，那么以后他可以升天，他可以到西天，极乐世界，这个也给人民解除一些精神上的痛苦。
The Xianbei had been followers of shamanism. They believed that all things had spirits, and they worshipped animals and plants, as well as natural phenomena. However, by the time they unified the northern region by conquest and grappled with the Eastern Jin regime to the south, many had adopted Buddhism. Yet, for Buddhism to consolidate its hold, the monks needed to come up with new strategies. Around 397 AD, a monk named Fa Guo arrived in Pingcheng, the capital of the Northern Wei dynasty. Historical records state that Fa Guo was well versed in Buddhist scriptures and monastic discipline. At that time, Tuoba, the founding emperor of the dynasty, was beginning to show interest in Buddhism, and he invited Fa Guo to give him a sermon. On meeting Tuoba, Fa Guo did something unexpected. The monk knelt down before him. To many in China, Buddhist monks had often been seen as mavericks, asserting that as monks they did not need to pay proper respects to rulers. Fa Guo explained his unusual behavior by saying that the emperor could promote Buddhism, so he was not worshipping the emperor, he was simply paying respects to the Buddha. He told Tuoba that the emperor was a living Buddha, and monks should pay respect to the living Buddha accordingly. The idea of an emperor being a living Buddha appealed to Tuoba, and the dynasty's shift towards Buddhism laid the political foundations for the excavation of the Yungang Grottoes. According to the Book of Wei, after Emperor Wencheng ascended the throne, he ordered the erection of stone statues representing emperors. In other words, the Buddha statues were to be based on the physical characteristics of each emperor of the Northern Wei dynasty. Emperor Wencheng was seeking to invoke a moral justification for his regime, in keeping with the concept of the mandate of heaven.
他这样的话，他可以自己独尊，那么他本身就是活着的如来，这样的话，对他的统治来讲非常有利。所以从北魏王朝开始，他对佛教的提倡，对佛教他自己礼佛，那都非常多，而且非常重要。
During the Northern Wei dynasty, the Yungang Grottoes were referred to as the Wuzhou Hill Grotto Temple. The name Yungang came into use during the Ming dynasty, a millennium later, when a military outpost called Yungang Fort was established on the hill. The grotto temples in India, the birthplace of Buddhism, originally served as residences for monks. However, as Buddhism travelled eastward, these temples evolved into shrines of Buddhist-inspired art which spread across China. The Sanxiandong Grottoes and Kuzhou Caves in Xinjiang are the earliest grottos in China. The Northern Wei dynasty saw many grotto temples from Xinjiang through Gansu to the upper and middle reaches of the Yangtze River. Among these grottos, built at various locations and times, the Yungang Grottoes, situated on the westernmost part of the Hai-He River basin and adjacent to the Yellow River, are particularly significant.
云冈石窟的重要性就在于，它是北中国地区皇家的第一个大寺院，大石窟。那么在它建立完之后，因为它是皇家的，它又统一了北方，所以它那种造像风格呢，就反过来就是向外扩，就像一个大石头扔进水里以后，它往外扩。所以佛教的传播，就包括佛像本身，它并不是说就完全是从西到东的一个过程，它很复杂，它也有从中央然后往地方上传播的这么一个过程啊，甚至就是远在敦煌，它也接受过这个云冈石窟的影响。
The Yungang Grottoes are divided by two narrow gullies into three main areas: east, central and west. The east area comprises caves 1 to 4, the central area 5 to 13, and the west 14 to 45. Almost every cave is surrounded by a honeycomb of subsidiary niches, creating a magnificent array of densely packed niches and Buddha statues throughout the complex. Caves 16 to 20 are in the eastern section of the west area. This section boasts the flattest and most imposing face of the 1 kilometre-long cliff at Wuzhou Hill, and caves 16 to 20 are thought to be the first to have been created. The Buddha in Cave 20, which some scholars interpret as symbolizing the Northern Wei dynasty founding emperor Tuoba, sits cross-legged at the foot of Wuzhou Hill. In addition to its European facial features, the statue's attire is also noteworthy. The kasaya leaving the right shoulder bare shares the bold and pronounced lines prevalent in the Buddhist sculptures of ancient India and Central Asia. This kasaya also resembles ancient Greek robing. Art historians believe this sculpture specifically demonstrates the influence of Gandharan art. Gandhara is a transliteration of the Sanskrit word meaning fragrant land. Today it's part of northern Pakistan, around the lower reaches of the Kabul River. In ancient times it referred to the Songling, an area west of the Pamir Plateau. In the 4th century BC, Alexander the Great's conquests brought ancient Greek sculptural art to the Gandhara region. Around the 1st century AD, Buddhism was flourishing there. Prior to that, Buddhism didn't have a tradition of building Buddha statues. But when Buddhism met the Gandharans, who had mastered the art of ancient Greek sculpture, the first Buddhist statues were born.
犍陀罗艺术呢，它既吸收了印度的佛教内容和印度造像艺术，同时大量的采用了希腊式的艺术风格，比如说我们看到的犍陀罗佛像，一种像希腊神像那样的英雄般的人物形象。
This is a cultural fusion at work. From the 4th to the 6th century, monks, merchants and craftsmen regularly travelled between the Gandhara region and the western regions of China via the Silk Road. They played a pivotal role in the eastward spread of both Buddhism and Gandharan art. Consequently, Buddhist statuary, influenced by ancient Greek and Roman artistic styles, were introduced to China. The clearest examples of these Gandharan-style statues can be found in the early caves of the Yungang Grottoes on Wuzhou Hill.
那么早期的佛教造像艺术更多的是他看到了佛教最早的产生佛教的犍陀罗艺术风格。那么当这个佛教产生犍陀罗艺术风格之后，东传之后，实际上现在最具代表性的就是云冈。云冈就是犍陀罗艺术东传以后产生的一个巅峰之作。
Some scholars believe that the main statue in Cave 19 symbolizes Tuoba, the second emperor of the Northern Wei dynasty. Standing at 16.8 meters tall, it's the second largest Buddha in the Yungang Grottoes. This Buddha features a square face and a dignified, solemn expression. It sits cross-legged, with the right hand raised in a gesture meaning fearlessness. The left hand is half-clenched, resting on the knee, holding a roll of cloth.
他的左手，拿的是布帛，这个布帛呢，表示一种，法医的传承，就是说把佛法由一位传承给另外一位，啊，表现了佛法永存的、永远传下去的这么一个理念。
The style of Cave 19 is unique among Buddhist caves. Its arch contour reminds people of the vast sky and the domes of yurts, both of which were highly familiar to the Tuoba clan of the Xianbei people from the northern grasslands. Besides complying with the structural requirements for such grottos, the design also reflects daily life on the grasslands. The dome and surrounding walls of Cave 19 are intricately carved with thousands of small niches and Buddhas of the highest quality. On the lower part of the south wall to the east side of the arch, there's a depiction of a young novice monk carrying a pot. The monk's innocent expression adds a touch of childlike charm to the solemnity of the cave. On the upper part of the cave's south wall, there's a scene from the Buddhist scriptures depicting the story of Ruhala meeting his father, the Buddha. It portrays Shakyamuni's returning home for the first time to meet his 5-year-old son after becoming a recluse. In the sculpture, Shakyamuni stands with his right hand raised in a mudra while gently caressing Rahula's head with his left hand. Rahula puts his palms together in reverence, showing a deep affection and joy in seeing his father. The statue captures the strong father-son bond. Tuoba was the oldest son of Tuoba Gui. Historically, the Xianbei rulers were succeeded to the throne by a younger brother or someone elected by the tribe. However, Tuoba Gui adopted a Han hereditary system, which favoured the firstborn son. Consequently, Tuoba Se became the first in the history of the Northern Wei dynasty to inherit the throne as the eldest son. After his ascension, Tuoba Se continued his father's efforts to integrate different ethnicities and cultures. He adopted many Han practices and rituals, and appointed numerous Han officials. Sui Hao was the most favoured among them. Liang Fun, a famous snack in Datong, has an unknown origin, but the earliest record of this delicacy is by Sui Hao, the noted Northern Wei official. He even wrote a book called Shi Jing, or Dietary Classic. Although this book is lost to history, the method of making Liang Fun is referred to in ancient books like Qi Min Yao Shu and Book of Sui.
但是就是在奇妙术里头记载，他这个凉粉吃的时候，他要或者是热的，他浇一个肉汤哈，然后凉的呢就是放在这个麻酱里头啊，放在奶酪里头吃。但是现在基本上就是属于放在辣椒里放辣椒啊，什么酱啊、酱油啊、醋啊这些油啊这些。
Historical records depict Sui Hao as a Confucian scholar, well versed in various schools of thought. He had a tough and resolute character, often offering candid advice. Additionally, he was knowledgeable in military affairs. Sui Hao tried his best to introduce the Xianbei emperor to Confucianism. He advised Tuoba Se to adopt the Han hereditary system and designate a crown prince early on. Tuoba Se's unusually intelligent eldest son, Tuoba Tao, started leading troops in battle at the tender age of 12. In 422 AD, to ensure a smooth succession, Tuoba Se officially named Tuoba Tao as the crown prince. The next year, when Tuoba Se died at the age of 31, the 15-year-old Tuoba Tao ascended the throne. His reign would have a profound influence on the trajectory of the Northern Wei dynasty. Some scholars speculate that Cave 18 was constructed for Tuoba Tao, Emperor Tai Wu of the Northern Wei dynasty. From the outside, this cave looks just like the others, with an arch below and an open window above. Its exterior walls are engraved with many rows of meditating Buddha statues, densely arranged like a honeycomb. These meticulously organized designs represented the concept of Mahayana Buddhism, which teaches that all beings can attain Buddhahood. Although the cliffs have been weathered over thousands of years, the remnants of thousands of Buddha statues still reflect the faith and devotion that went into carving these figures. The large Buddha on the north wall of Cave 18 stands 15.5 meters high. Its uniqueness lies in the kasaya it wears, which is itself adorned with thousands of miniature Buddha figures, aligned with the folds and creases of the kasaya. Even the corner of the kasaya, held by the Buddha's left hand, is filled with small Buddhas, hence its name, the 1,000 Buddha Kasaya. Carving thousands of Buddha figures on a stone surface requires exceptional courage and skill. The thousands of small Buddhas, intricately crafted to follow the dynamic flow of the kasaya and arranged in such an orderly manner, are a genuine masterpiece. On each side of the main Buddha in Cave 18, there are one Buddha, one Bodhisattva, and 5 disciples. While the Bodhisattva and disciples on the west side have been weathered over time, the Buddha on the east side, which stands on a lotus flower, is over 10 meters tall and has an aureole. The Bodhisattva beside this Buddha wears an exquisitely carved crown. Above the Buddha's head are a number of disciples with animated facial expressions. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in Cave 18, large and small, surround the main Buddha, said to represent the Emperor Tuoba Tao. The Book of Wei lauds Tuoba Tao as a ruler skilled in both literary and military arts, with deep respect for Confucian scholars. Like his father, Tuoba Se, he appointed Han officials, such as Sui Hao, despite opposition from the Xianbei nobles. This facilitated the Northern Wei's transition into a Central Plains feudal empire. Although well versed in both Confucianism and Taoism, Sui Hao staunchly opposed Buddhism. He introduced Tuoba Tao to Taoist reformer Ko Qianze, effectively converting him to Taoism. Taoism emerged as an organized religion during the late Eastern Han dynasty in the 2nd century. Initially, it was overshadowed by the more established Buddhism. Ko Qianze reformed Taoism by integrating Confucian and Buddhist ideas, enriching its Taoist doctrine, principles, and fasting rituals, and thus significantly advancing its development. Hengshan Mountain's Hanging Temple is located just 65 kilometers from Datong. It's said that Ko Qianze's dying wish was to construct a floating temple to be closer to celestial beings and cast away worldly troubles. After years of dedication, his followers transformed the army service station established during Tuoba Gui's march to Pingcheng into this architectural marvel. What sets the Hanging Temple apart isn't just its unique location, but also the fact that it's the only existing temple in China that melds Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. In the center of the temple sits Shakyamuni Buddha, with Confucius, the founder of Confucianism, on his left, and Lao Tzu, the foundational figurehead of Taoism, on his right. However, these three statues, symbolizing the harmonious coexistence of these belief systems, were not set in place during the Northern Wei dynasty. Under Tuoba Tao's rule, they were in fact in fierce competition, often with violent results. In 440 AD, Emperor Tuoba Tao, having embraced Taoism, adopted a new title of his reign, Taiping Zhenjun, from Taoist philosophy, and appointed Ko Qianze as the state preceptor. Although Tuoba Tao made Taoism the state religion, Buddhism continued to spread vigorously. By then, there were 30,000 Buddhist temples housing 2 million monks. Book of Wei, Terrain, indicates the Northern Wei dynasty had a population ranging from 11 to 20 million. After excluding about half of the female population and those who were too old, young, sick, and disabled, there were still over 2 million individuals exempt from taxation and military service, relying solely on religious offerings, the temple monks. In addition, the extensive construction and maintenance of Buddhist sites placed a heavy burden on the Northern Wei's economy and tax revenues. During his reign, Tuoba Tao faced threats from two powerful adversaries. In the north were the Rouran nomads, who, like previous northern ethnic minorities, frequently raided the borders of the Northern Wei state. In the south, the Liu Song dynasty, a strongman regime rose, ending the rule of the Eastern Jin dynasty. Its founder, Liu Yu, despite his humble beginnings, unified South China after nearly 20 years of warfare, even capturing Chang'an in one northern expedition. Under this economic and military pressure, Tuoba Tao issued an edict stating that all privately supported monks and sorcerers must report to the government on pain of death. This draconian punishment would extend to their patrons' entire families. Understandably, private support for the monastic life all but vanished. In the cities, monks were stopped by soldiers and forced to return to a secular life. Yet people didn't realize this was just the start of their ordeal. In 446 AD, an event occurred that triggered a massive purge of Buddhism. It was the year that a rebellion broke out in Shanxi. When passing by Chang'an on campaign, Tuoba Tao discovered weapons like bows, arrows, and knives stored in a temple. Convinced that the temple was aiding the rebels, he directed Sui Hao to draft the decree to destroy Buddhism, mandating that all Buddhist statues and scriptures should be destroyed by fire, monks of all ages should be buried alive, and the spread of Buddhism in any form should be banned.
就是说，出家的太多，那对于国家的这个力量，它会是一种削弱。以皇帝为首的这个大肆的信佛的话呢，会出现财富也大量的流入寺院。那么财富流走了，这个人力流走了，那么对于这个国家，那他怎么办？所以他就面临着一种选择。那么有的皇帝的选择，那么就是一种极端的选择，就是灭佛。
This marked the first, though by no means the last, recorded suppression of Buddhism in Chinese history. Later anti-Buddhist movements were similar reactions to the perceived threat the organized monastic system posed to the power and wealth of the ruling dynasty. The later persecutions were mainly about asking monks and nuns to return to secular life and reducing the number and scale of temples. None of them were as cruel as the campaign carried out by the Northern Wei dynasty. The decree to destroy Buddhism explicitly ordered the annihilation of all Buddhist deities and the execution of monks young and old. In the Buddha's eyes, such killing was just a predestined outcome in the cycle of formation, existence, disintegration, and emptiness. However, ordinary people found it difficult to bear. Even Ko Qianzhe, an ally of Sui Hao, was appalled. Despite Ko Qianzhe's repeated warnings against the slaughter, Sui Hao turned a deaf ear. The decree to destroy Buddhism was soon delivered to Tuoba Huang, the eldest son of Tuoba Tao, in the capital of Pingcheng. Fortunately, as a follower of Buddhism, Tuoba Huang decided to postpone issuing the decree, allowing some monks to escape. The suppression swiftly spread across the northern lands with unprecedented brutality. Monks were buried alive, temple properties were looted, and Buddhist pagodas and temples built over generations were destroyed. Archaeologists have found many burial pits from the Northern Wei era filled not with human remains, but with Buddhist statues. In one such pit in Linjiang, Hebei province, nearly 3,000 Buddhist statues were discovered within a space of less than 3 cubic meters.
这个呢，都是因为毁佛灭佛之后，那么有很多佛像被打碎了，也有的可能被秘密的藏匿了。风声这个很紧的这个时期过了之后，一些教徒 一些信徒，他们把这些佛像呢给集中起来，进行集中的义埋，也就是用稍微俗一点的话说，叫所谓的做功德。他们把这些佛像呢集中埋起来，再做功德。那么实际上这个呢，就是在毁佛灭佛之后所做的事情。
Tuoba Tao, known as a god of war in historical records, spent much of his life on the battlefield and was ever victorious. In the war against the Ruoran, he was on a par with the legendary general Huo Chubing, who defeated the Xiongnu during Emperor Wu's reign in the Han Dynasty. Tuoba Tao launched 13 campaigns against the Ruoran, with the most notable in 429 AD, when he divided his forces for an all-out attack. On the Eastern Front, Tuoba Tao personally led his cavalry in a long-range raid, penetrating deep into enemy lines and capturing a significant number of enemy troops. This severely weakened the Ruoran, forcing them to retreat and bringing temporary peace to the northern frontier. After more than a decade of warfare, Tuoba Tao penetrated the He corridor in 439 AD and conquered another formidable foe, Northern Liang. This victory marked the end of the 5 barbarian and 16 kingdoms period and completed the unification of northern China after 135 years of turmoil. The He corridor is part of the vital route by which Buddhism entered China via the Silk Road. The rulers of northern Liang and their predecessors in the region had been devout Buddhists. These are the Yungang Grottoes, carved during the later Qin period, probably about 50 years before the Yungang Grottoes. These are the Mogao caves, said to be carved around 336 AD, roughly a century before the Yungang Grottoes. At that time, the He corridor was China's center of Buddhism. Besides grotto carving and temple construction, the rulers in this region also commissioned monks to translate Buddhist scriptures. Wu Wei, renowned for the excavation of the Han Dynasty masterpiece, Galloping Horse Treading on a Flying Swallow, was the capital of Northern Liang. When the Northern Wei conquered the Northern Liang, they moved 3,000 monks and 30,000 officials, artisans and civilians from Wu Wei to Pingcheng. Wu Wei had many talents in Buddhism. The eminent Indian monk Dharmak Sima once translated Buddhist scriptures there, and grottos were also carved near Wu Wei. After the downfall of Northern Liang, the center of Buddhism in northern China shifted eastward to Pingcheng, the capital of the Northern Wei dynasty. Wuzhou Hill lies directly on the route they would have taken to relocation in Pingcheng. Among the numerous monks being relocated there was a monk named Tan Yao. At that time, he couldn't have anticipated the imminent persecution he and the other Buddhists would face, let alone foresee that he would realize a grand dream at that spot. After Tuoba Tao's death, it would be Tan Yao who would lead monks and craftsmen of various ethnicities to build the first of the Yungang Grottoes at the foot of Wuzhou Hill.